So thank you so much everyone for joining this session. And yesterday's session, if you will see, we have covered the BI report call in integration. We have seen that how we can test the report from SOAP services, and the same implementation we have done in Oracle integration. And yes, we have learned a stage file read file operation where we learned that how we can use read file operation of a stage file to get the data of any file created in Oracle integration. So now in today's session, we will first create connection, database connection. So right now we have ATP database. So we will create ATP database connection in OIC, and then we will learn how we can insert data into the table. Later on, we will go for that fetching the data from table, calling the PLSQL procedure, that kind of things we will cover later on. And yes, yesterday's session, if you will see, we call the BI report, that simple BI report, and whatever data we are getting, we are returning back data as a response. So today we will cover the same how we can send that specific BI report data over email. And in case of large data file, so suppose BI report is going to return back large file, like even the file size is going to be more than 10 MB. So how we can handle that one? So as you know that in generation 2, we have the stage file limitation of 10 MB only. If our stage file data having more than 10 MB, the stage file read entire file operation cannot be worked there, and it will throw an error if our data file can have the maximum more than 10 MB of size. So how we can handle all these things, we will learn in this video, in this session. So here, let's start with that. So here we have integration created last day, and in the integration, we are going to pass the report path. And based on the report path, it's fetching the data from report, and whatever data it is fetching, it's returning back as a response. So again, if you will see, we are going to run, and the same we are receiving as a integration response. So here we will do one changes. So whatever data file we are receiving, we will try to pass same data over email also. So let me edit this integration so that it can send email. So here I have created the integration. So what I will do, delete the previous integration. So now I will make a clone of this integration. And here I will change the version as, instead of making clone, let me make a clone of it. So here we will give the name as access call BI report, and file over in. Now click on clone. That will be activate first previous one. Taking a bit of time to deactivate. Let me just wait for a while. Till now, what I will do, I will download opaque schema. Now here you can see in previous video, we created integration, we call the BI report. That BI report is sending data in base64 code, and with the help of the function, predefined function by Oracle that decode base64 to reference, we converted that base64 code into the file reference. So now we have the second approach we have for converting this base64 code into file reference is the opaque schema. So opaque schema is nothing that it's the structure of the file, that file is going to take a request as a base64 code, and it will convert the base64 code data into actual file reference. So here you can see this is the opaque schema. You can directly download the opaque schema from Google or the Oracle doc here. With the help of this opaque schema only, we will be able to convert that base64 code into actual file reference. And here we have to provide the file and all. So that here if you will see, while using these functions, we are not able to provide any file name and all. Right, as we directly converted the file reference base64 code into file reference, and the same file reference we used while reading the data. So now this time what we will do, instead of using this function, we will use opaque schema. Now here we'll first change the response. So in this integration, we don't want to response the report data. So that I will edit that one and change the response. And in the response here, what we will do? In response, we will provide the status as success or error. And here we will give the file name. What kind of file name we passed over server or email. So it's done and done. So here we updated that one, and now let me say. And now here you can see in this response of this endpoint, we will get base64 code, and we have to convert that base64 code into file reference, or we need to create file based on this base64 code. So we know that in Oracle integration, whenever we are going to create file, we have to use a stage file operation. So again here we will use a stage file, and here we are going to create the file first. We have the data, we have data from the report call response, and based on that data, we have to create the file. For creating the file, we will use a stage file write operation. I will give the name as write file stage, and here we have to select the write file operation so that we can create the file. Now here you can see, while creating the file, we have to specify the name and the directory where we have to create the file. So here I will give the name as CONCAT invoice data underscore. I will concrete the instance ID. In metadata, we have instance ID runtime. Here we have instance ID. And now the file format will be CSV. So I will add CSV here. .csv. So now we successfully given the name. You can see the name will be invoice data underscore instance ID .csv. Did the expression builder. Now here we have to provide the file directory where we have to create the file. So this file is OIC virtual directory. Remember, this is the OIC virtual directory, not the SFTP or somewhere else. So this is the OIC virtual directory. So I will just edit here and we give the name as temp. Save those. Now here I will next, and here we have to provide the schema. So what kind of file it is. So as you know that we are not aware about that what kind of file we are going to receive from report call, right? So that's why we have to choose XML XSD schema, so that we can provide the opaque element, opaque schema there, and that opaque schema element we will pass base64 code, and with the help of this base64 encoder, it will convert that base64 code and it will create the file. So remember, whenever we are using opaque schema as a file structure, we have to provide base64 code only. So here we will select the opaque schema. I will select open. And here you can see once we selected opaque schema, we have the element as opaque element. And this element is coming from here only, you can see. So now next and done. So we configure the write stage file operation so that we can create the file based on the report response. So how we will map? So here you can see if we will edit the mapper. In the mapper you can see we have opaque element, and this opaque element will be mapped with the report response base 64 code. So here we have report byte, and this report byte will be mapped with the opaque element. So that the base 64 code we mapped here, it will convert this base 64 code into actual file reference with the help of write stage file operation. Save. So here we are successfully able to create file. Now this file we need to send over the email. For file sending the file over email, we require notification. So here we will add the notification, and in notification I will give the name as notification create, and here from we need to pass. To can anyone please give your email ID, or I will use my email ID only. Okay, let it be. So here I use my email, the name, code file. Here again we have to write message. So hi team, please find test file for PI report. And here even if we want to provide the file name, so yes, we can provide the file name. So here I will map that file name, and I will give the variable that p underscore file name, and we have to create new variable with this name. So here we'll go give the name as p file name, and from here we have to map the file name. So as we know that we have file name in the stage file response, so we will find the stage file. You can see this is the stage file write operation. Once we will map here inside the ICS, we have the file reference, and inside the ICS we have the properties also. Inside the properties we have the file name. You can see this is the file name. So I will drag this file name here, validate and close. Now let me validate. Now we have to provide the file reference, right? So we map the file name. That file name will be displayed here, and we have to provide the file reference so that the file can be loaded over email. So here again I will go to the write file. In the write file response, we have ICS file. Inside the ICS, we have the file reference. So we will map this file reference here in the attachment. So the file this created, that file will be sent over the email. So now we are done with the mapping, validate and close. Now here we have to map the response of the integration. So I will edit here. So here we are getting error because we updated the mapper. We updated the response mapper. So previously we had the various endpoint, but now we change the endpoint. So here I will just go and I will right click here, delete the target node. And again, once we expand, we can see we have a status and name. So in status, I generally use success as hard coded value. And in the name, we have to provide the file name. So file name will be coming from a stage response. We'll expand here ICS. Inside the ICS, we have properties, and inside the properties, we will have the file name. So we'll drag this file name here, validate and close. So now we are done with integration. We have to remove the error. So as you know that whenever we are editing any trigger endpoint, it's generating error. So here we have to add the tracking variable, save, save, and close. Now we are done with integration. So let's activate the integration first. Let me open the email. So we have seen, right? We have seen the email. Where is the, yeah? We have seen the email. We received the email file here, and in the email file we receive the, let me first correct the file name convention, that as we use .csv, the invalid file. Then we will move to the integration changes part. So here let me update the integration here, deactivate. So at the time of providing the name in the right file only, we pass that invalid name as a comma instead of dot. So here if you will see the name here, this is the name, right? And here you can see, if you will able to see here, you can see instead of .csv we have comma csv. So I will use .csv here. Save. Next, 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 and done. Everything we have already mapped, so there is no required any changes. Just save and close. Now here we have to activate this integration. The integration is activated. Now test. So here we have to provide the file, the directory, report directory. So we have already provided. Just click on test. So you can see it will call the BI report, get the data in base64 code with the help of opaque schema stage file. We are going to convert that base64 code into file reference. And the same file we will receive over the email as we added the notification. So here you can see I received the email, a new email having the accurate file name. And once we'll click here, you can see we have the file. We have the file, right? And in the file we have header also. Why we have header? Because in the report only we are getting header. That's why we have header here. So everything is fine. Now we have to insert this data into database table. So we have already one connection of the database in SQL Developer, and the same database we have to access in the Oracle integration. For that we required connections. So let me first create the database connection. So for creating the connection, we need to move to the connection part, and here we have to select the adapter. So as this is ATP database, so we need to select the ATP here, ATP adapter here for creating the connection. So you can see Oracle ATP, select, and here we have to provide the names. I will give the name XX ATP database on. We will select role as trigger and invoke and create. Here you can see, here we have to provide the host port SSID and all. So as this is wallet, so what we will do, we will provide that the details from here only. So what details we have here, if you will see, we have the username, password. We don't have host and port as we are uploading zip file. So here you can see it's host name, post name, all are optional. So here we will provide the service name only. So what is the service name? Here you can see Fox Dev 1 ATP underscore high is the service name. So I will use this service name. I will use Fox Dev 1 ATP Fox Dev 1 ATP underscore high. And now here you can see we have to provide the credentials. So here we will have to upload the wallet. Let me upload the wallet. So here we have wallet, and remember, whenever you will get wallet, the password for wallet you will get. They will provide you, DB team provide you the wallet and the wallet password, a username, and all the credentials here. So here I will select. Even I have already taken the wallet password here. So here we have to select the wallet first, upload, and here we have to provide the wallet password. Remember, in SQL Developer, we don't require wallet password, but yes, while creating the connection in OIC, we require wallet password. So we done with the wallet password. Now we have to provide the username. So here this is the username, the same username I am going to use here, and the password for username. Now we are done with this one. So we have to test the connection. So once you will click on the test, Once everything will be fine, that will be moved to 100%. And once we will save, that draft will be changed to configured. So you can see it's 100%. It means we are successfully able to create the connection. Now we have to save so that it can be in the configure status. Now it's in configure status. So the simple way, while creating the ATP database connectivity, we have to provide the service name, and after the service name we have to provide the wallet password, username and user password. And if we are going to create the database Oracle database connection, we have to provide the host name, port name, SSID and all. So in ATP case, we don't require that kind of details. We will move back, and in integration, I will create a new integration by making a clone of that, so that I will read the file, and then file we will insert into the database. Here I will make another clone and report and the data into the clone. And here we have to edit the integration. Now here in this case, we don't require to send file over email. So I will delete this notification. And now here you can see we have created the file. Our file is available in OIC, the CSV file. Now we have to read this file so that whatever data inside the file have, we can see and we can use that data. So right now, if you will see, if we have checked that the right file having the file reference doesn't have the file data. For reading the data, we need again stage file operation. And in the stage file operation, we have to provide the schema. So what kind of schema is there in the file? So here we will give the name as read file underscore stage. Next, as same as the last session, we used read file operation. So here we are going to read entire file. So I will select read entire file, and here we can provide the file reference, and even we can provide the mapping of the file name. So friend, we know we have the file name and the file directory. So I will just specify the file name. So this file name we will get from the response of stage write operation. So I will map this stage write operation. Here you can see stage write. If we will expand here in ICS, here we have properties, and inside the properties we have the file name. So this is the file name. So I will drag this file name here, so that whatever file name we have given, we can use the same file name. Even we can write file name again here. And here we have to specify the directory where we created the file. So we will use the same way. Here in the stage write response ICS, inside we have properties, and inside the properties we have the directory. So I will drag this directory here. Okay. And instead of providing these two details, the file name and the directory, we can directly provide the file reference by clicking on yes here. Go next, and here we have to provide the structure. So as we know that our file having CSV file, we will select CSV. Now we have to provide the schema. So yesterday only we created one schema on the desktop. So let me see, and here that one, the schema was report data CSV. Once we will select, you can see in the report data we have all the columns, invoice ID and the source, invoice date and all. So that same we selected here, and now we have to give the name record and record set names. R and RS I will give as a schema, and go next, and done. So we are successfully able to configure the read file operation, so that we can read the data. Even you can see that while reading the data, we don't have any mapper.
No, actually, instead of providing the directory name and directory path, file name, I have provided directly file reference over here.
The same I used here, right?
No, you have used the directory path and name. Instead of that, I have used directly file reference, which is coming from right stage file.
Directory stage, we don't have directory stage reference. We have file reference.
No, no.
And
Could you please edit this one? Read file state.
Yesterday only we provided the file reference, and in the file reference again we don't have that one. Yeah, you
Here I
selected
have
this
chosen
yes one.
yes and I have chosen file reference. Thereafter,
The
one mapper got created.
same we have done yesterday, right? In yesterday integration we have done the same, and we don't have the mapper for the right mapper here, because we are providing all the details in the configuration only. That's why we don't have mapper. Let me show you the previous
Okay.
sentence. Wait.
Okay.
There is no need of mapper at the time. We created this one, right? Yesterday. If you will see this one,
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, here you can see we used read one and we don't have mapper for read. And here in the read only we provided the mapping as a file reference only. You can see here we have provided the file reference.
Okay.
That
Okay.
can
I
be
will
the
check
different
one
mapper.
more
You have
time.
to check. Yeah. So now here
Okay.
we are successfully able to read the data with the help of a stage file. Now once we read the data, we have to insert this data into table. So how we can insert the data into table? By making the connection between OIC to ATP. So we have already created connection. The same connection we will use here. So we have to drag this connection. So here I will select my connection name. Connection name was XX ATP Database Connection. So I will select this connection here. And now as I'm going to insert the data in the ATP connection, we have various operations. Here you can see we will run operation one by one. So first operation we have invoke a stored procedure. We can call the PL/SQL package created in database. Second, we have run a SQL statement. We can execute a SQL statement. We can perform operation on table. So right now we have to perform operation on table only. So we will select the last operation. Here we have to give the name. So as I'm going to insert data, so I will use insert underscore ATP. ATP is the endpoint name, insert is the operation I'm going to perform. Now here you can see once we selected the perform an operation on table, we have the option insert and another option we have insert or update. So as we are going to insert data into the table, we will use insert operation. Sometimes we require whenever we are getting data from response, the data have the primary key. And if we require that whatever primary key we have already exist in the database, instead of inserting new records, we want that previously record with previously created record for the same ID can be updated. So in this case, we will use insert or update. So all the new record which is not present in database, that will insert, and all the old record which is already present in database, that will be updated. So with the help of insert or update, that is merge or insert, we can perform that operation. So right now we are going to insert record into the table. So I will select insert. And now next. Now once we will move to next, here we have to select the schema. So what is the schema where our table is created? So you have to figure out the schema. So how you can identify the schema? You can identify. So first we have to create the table. So let me first create the table. So in the table, how many columns will be there? So this is our column of the report, VI report we are getting. The same we will use while creating the table. So let me create table first. Then we will provide the mapping there. So let me create table XXINV records. And here we have to provide the columns name. So this is the column name. Vendor ID, voice number, voice amount, voice date. And again, we will use all these extra columns so that we can have much control over the data. Instead of in run date, we will use date. Creation date instead of invoked by, we will use created by. Created by. Now here we will provide the date as everything as a varchar only, so that whatever data we can receive, we can insert the data into table. So let me provide the column size as 1000. So here once we will create, you can see Here we have move all these extra values.
No.
Yes.
Java record not started.
Okay, we'll say
Okay.
I'm using recording from not from Zoom today, but yes,
Okay.
from different applications. So here you can see we are successfully able to create the table. If we will select the query, select a star from the table name. Table name, we have the table, but we don't have any data. So we will use OIC to insert data into this table. So before going to provide the table details, we have to provide the schema of the table here. We have to select the schema. So how we will identify the schema? So we have one object that select a star from all objects table, where all the objects whatever we created as a PL or the tables will store here. All objects, and here if you will see we have one column that object name. So we will add the validation here where object name is equals to, we will provide the table name there. So it will return back the object details. So you can see we created this table and we have owner as Fox. Owner, it means the schema of this table. Schema of this table is Fox. So here we identify the schema, and now same schema we will select here. So here we have the schema. Once we will select the schema, as we are going to select table, so here the table is already selected. We have to provide the table name. So as we have table name starting with XX, so I will use XX percentage search. So all the table created with XX percentage, it will list down here. So here you can see we have two table created, XX gross domestic product and the XX INV record. So this is our table. So I will select this table and I will move this in selection box. So here you can see our table is selected. Now we'll click on import table. So that table will be imported or added in the endpoint. Now it's taking a bit time. So now table is added here, and here you can see it's asking for add a primary key. So right now in our table we don't have any key as a primary key. That's why it's asking here to select any column as a primary key. By selecting any column as a primary key here, it will not affect in table. It will not do any changes in table structure. It's just for the OIC purpose, just for the configuration purpose, so that it can be defined that for this specific column we have to pass the data, nothing else. So we selected the invoice ID as a column and OK, and next. Here even we have the different validation while inserting the data. If we want to add additional validations like adding the filter or adding the any relationship between two different tables, we can do by coming here and by doing the validation here. But right now we don't want to do any validation. Even while inserting the data, we can use sequence here. So if you see the in advanced option, if we are going to use any sequence, suppose we created sequence here for the invoice ID, and every time whenever we want to insert data, invoice ID data is stored inserted with the sequence, so we can select the sequence coming from here. So right now we don't have any sequence for this table. So here you can see even we don't have any sequence created in the database. That's why it's not showing here. If we have the sequence, that will be listed here, and we can select the sequence for a specific table for the primary key column only. So right now we don't have anything. We'll skip and go next, and we will done. Just done. So we are successfully able to add the ATP connection so that we can provide the data to the ATP so that the same data can be inserted into the table. Here you can see we added the endpoint, and once you will go to the mapper where we have to provide the data, which data we have to insert, you can see here you can see this is our table name. Once we will expand here, you can see these all are the column. Now we have to provide the mapping. So from where we will provide the mapping, we have used read operation, read a stage file. Once we will expand the read stage file, you can see we have the data. So here you can see we can pass this data by mapping here. But as we know that we have multiple record coming from the read response, it means while reading the report data file, we have multiple records. That's why you can see it's array symbol. And yes, while inserting data into table, ATP provide facilities. We can provide the array mapping. You can see here, this is the array icon. It means that suppose if our file having the 10 records, and if we will map this array with this array, all the 10 record will be inserted into the table in a single hit only. In a single hit, it will insert all the 10 records. So here, that's why we added the mapper. And yes, sometimes we require do validation. So what we are going to do is that we can iterate the loop over this one. We can iterate the loop on this record, and one by one we can insert the record into the table. So instead of that, we can use the array mapping. So here I will provide the mapping: invoice number, invoice amount, invoice date, date, source. And while mapping, remember, we cannot map two destination mapper with two different endpoints. So here you can see source is already mapped here. So we cannot add here different source node into the target node, right? So now we're done with that. We have to use instance ID. So instance ID we have in the integration metadata. In runtime, we have the instance ID created by, we have invoked by, and creation date we will use the current date. So here we have the current date. Current date time function. Current date time function will return date time and second. So here we map here. So everything we successfully mapped, validate. So we map the data, we map the array element. So whatever data will be there, the same data will be inserted into table, validate and close. Close. And here we have to activate this integration. Activate. Yeah, you can see now this is activated, and here we have to run the integration. So once we will go for executing the integration, in body we have to pass the directory. So I have already make a copy of the report directory. We pass the report directory and test. Here it will take a bit of time to get the data from database, data from BI report, and the same data it will insert into the table. So let me complete the integration first. You can say integration completed. In response, we got the same response which we earlier mapper, and now here you can see we have the instance details, integration instance details. So let me explain here. So now here you can see we read the data with the help of read stage file, and if you will see the response, we have the data, whatever data we are coming for, it's coming from the report. And here you can see the same data we provide in the mapping of the insert ATP. So in insert you can see send is the mapper, and here if you will click on message, you can see the same data we inserted, we pass to the mapper so that the same data can be inserted. You can see the data with some additional values. So now if we will move to the database table and we will query the table again, we will see the data having inserted into the table. You can see the same data, whatever data we passed from the integration, the same data inserted into the table. You can see the creation date in the timestamp of minute, hour, second, that all the details, and all the records having the time same. You can see we have total 350 records. Here you can see 349 records, one included header. So header we have not inserted here because header is skipped in the stage file read operation only. So now this is the way we can insert data into the table. So now you can see here we provided the direct mapping. So there can be some situation, right, where we can have the large data coming from BI report, and at the time we can have the error. So let me first deactivate the integration and let me show you that how we can handle that one. Now I will make a clone of this one, insert data into the table only. Deactivate that. We have to make a clone, and here all BI report and read data in. So let me show you how we can read data into segment. So here now you can see in the stage file operation we have limitation that we can read only up to the data which is having less than 10 MB. So suppose we call the BI report returns the data more than having the more than 10 MB of size. So it will create the file, but at the time of reading the data from the file, it will generate an error. It cannot read the data having more than 10 MB of size. So at that case, what we can do? So instead of here, if you will see the operation, instead of using read entire file, we will select read file in segments. So what we can do? Let me cancel this one. Let me delete this mapper. And now again, I will add the stage file operation here. And in the stage file, I will give the name as read in segment underscore stage. Next. And here instead of read entire file, we will select read file in segment. So here we selected read file in segment, and here we have to provide the file name and the directory. The same we can achieve by providing the file reference. So I will choose file reference, and here we have the file reference. We have the file reference in the right file. So in the right file only, once we will expand the right file, once we expand here at the ICS file, here we have the file reference. I will map this file reference here, save and close, so that whatever file we write, the file will be read here in the segment only, and the rest of the process will be same. So here you can see which kind of format file we have, CSV. Next, we have to provide the sample here, and let me confirm that read file in segment we selected. Yeah, read file in segment, and here you can see we have one option of process sequentially. Process sequentially, it means that all the records it will read in one bulk only, and but here you can see right now we don't have tick. It means that the record will read in the segment parallelly. It means one by one it will go, and all the records whatever data we have in the file, that will read the data, and but the data for processing it will give in the chunk of 200 records only. Once we will select the sequentially, sequentially all the data will be read in the segment only, but it will provide the data, it will get the data from the file sequentially manner, right? It will get 100 first to 100 records, then it will move to the next 200 records, so on. So right now we are not going to make this as a sequentially, so it will be parallelly only. So now here we have to go next, we have to select the schema, and here again we will select the file structure. So we have already created the report data CSV file structure. We will pass here R for record, RS for record set, and all these things will be same. I don't want to change anything here. Now done. So here, if you will see the one thing, let me add show you here. If you will see the summary, here you can see segment size is 200. So the read files in segment having the size of chunk of 200 records. This is the 200 records. It means that suppose in the file we have 349 records. So what it will do in the first single hit, it will read first 200 record, and then in the second read, it will read the next 200 record. In old integration instance, that is generation 2, we don't have option to change the segment size. But yes, in instance 3, generation 3 of the OIC instance, we have option to change the segment size. While configuration only, we can provide the segment size in a single segment, how many records we can read. the chunk of data. But in generation 2, we don't have such option. So now we configure that one, and here you can see, if you remember, you can relate this read in file in segments related to the loop only. So here you can see we have the endpoint here. It means that whatever data we have in the file, it will read and it will iterate the process until they have read all the data. So what we want to do, we want to insert the data whenever data will be read. So here this is the scope of the read file in segment. Outside this scope, we will not be able to find this read file in segment. So if we here, if you will see insert ATP, if we will try to find the mapper of the read file in segment, we will not be able to find that one. Here you can see we have only the write file operation, we don't have read, because the scope of that read file is limited here. The scope of read file is limited till here only. Starting from here to here. Between these two, whatever operation we will perform, we will get the data from the read in segment, but outside this endpoint, outside this mapper, we cannot access that one. So now we have to insert the data. So I will drag this insert ATP here inside that one. So for drag, we will use reposition. I will drag the mapper and I will use this insert. So now select, and here you can see we have to provide the mapping. So I will edit that one. And here you can see all the mappers, whatever we had earlier, that mapper is from the previous read file endpoint. Now we have to provide the mapping from the read in segment one. You can see inside that we have the read in segments. So here I will delete this all this one and will expand, and here I will go for expand the read file in segment rs, and again here we can see we have the array element, as in a single hit it can read 200 records. So at a single time, it will read 200 records here. So I will provide the mapping array to array. Now invoice ID, vendor ID, and the invoice num, amount, invoice date, source, and here we have instance ID. The instance ID we will have from the metadata only. Instance ID and the invoked by, and the creation date will be our. I will map here current date. Current date time will be mapped here. So now we are done with the mapping. So here, friend, what it will do, it will first run, it will read the 200 record from the file. The 200 record we will inserted. Again, it will iterate the same reading segment, and next 200 record will be iterated, and so on. So until we will have all the data, it will iterate the same. So here you can see we are inserting the data here. So what we can do for identifying or the just for the logging purpose, what we will do here, this is our invoice number. So what we will do, the segment, so whatever segment they will use, suppose I want to concatenate the segment number in the invoice number only. In the last of that invoice number, we want to concatenate the segment or invoice number or any column, let's consider. So suppose here we have instance ID. So instance ID, we will concatenate the segment, that is underscore 1, underscore 2, 3. So how many segments would be there? We want to concatenate all the segments. So how we can achieve that one? So let me close here. So here we will create one variable that we will provide value in that variable, and every time whenever this loop of the read in segment will iterated, we will provide the mapping of this number variable. So let me create one variable. So here we can create the normal variable using a stage, or we can create the global variable. So let me create the global variable as integer type. So let me add that gvar sequence, and here we'll select as a number, and done. We created the global variable. Now before going to start this one, we have to update the variable value as 1. So here I is global underscore stit which configure. Now here we have to select the variable. So this is the gvar sequence, and here in the assign I want to assign 1. So now we assign the one numeric value here, and whenever we will try to insert, we will insert that, we will concatenate this one value with the instance ID. So here in the mapper only, we will move to the mapper, and if we will see the mapper, we have instance ID, and here we have to concatenate the value. So I will use the concat and instance ID, and we have to concatenate as underscore, and we have to concatenate the global variable sequence. So here I will map the here. So done. So that we can be aware about that what is the sequence for the segment we receive the data. So which data we receive in which segment. So now we done with the mapping, and every time whenever it will insert the data, before going to iterate second time, we have to update the value. So again I will use data stitch and update sequence underscore stit which configure. Here we have to select the variable and what kind of value we want to provide. We want to provide value as whatever value we have for the G sequence plus 1. Now we are done. So the first time the value will be 1, it will map the data and it will increase the values to 1. So it will be 2. Next time it will insert the data and the value will be inserted as 2 underscore 2. Now it will increase the data, that will be 3, something like that. So save. Now here you can see we have one warning. So why we have one warning? You can see we have warning here. So read in segment operation allow, or that suggested that we can use read in segment operation only in the asynchronous integration. Asynchronous integration, it means that that integration should not return any value. But right now we are returning some value. That's why it's showing that warning. Why it's showing that warning? Because the integration which having the synchronous integration having the limit of 6 minutes, limit of 5 minutes. It means 300 seconds. That app-driven integration should be completed in 300 seconds if we have configured the response payload. So right now we don't require the response in this case. So what I will do, I will remove the response here. For removing the response payload, we need to come here in the request, in the configure resource configure, and we will untick here. Next, you can see the response has removed, and next, done. So once we remove the response wrapper, the mapping will be removed. You can see the mapper is removed, and the mapper for that also remove and added the endpoint as a stop. And here we have one error. The we have one error because of the identifier, business identifier. So whenever we are doing changes in the trigger endpoint, we have to add the business identifier again and again. So let me add the tracking variables as a directory only. Save. Then we need to add there. Save. Again we have warning. Let me see this warning. The stage is fine and include action that will result in segment being processed sequentially. Okay, so this warning is for sequential only, so no issue. We will let it be the same. Just close. So it's always suggested that you use read in segment operation in the asynchronous integration, because if we are using the read in segment, we can read data file up to 1 GB. And obviously, while processing the 1 GB of file, it can take some time. That can be the exceeded of the 5 minutes of the time limit for the app-driven integration. That's why it suggested that we need to use read file in segment in the asynchronous integration only. So now here we have done. We will activate the integration. Let me truncate the table. So whatever data we will have, we will truncate this table. So all the records from the table is removed now. So integration is activated. Now we are going to run the integration. So here in the body, we have to provide the directory, the report path. We'll provide the report path from here and paste. So it's taking a little bit of time to read the data, insert the data into database table. So we will wait for a while. And here you can see integration is completed successfully. And now if you will see the login message, here you can see we call the report, whatever data we received, we converted the data into actual file with the help of write file operation, and we added the variable, in which variable we store the value as 1. We added the read in segment operation, and here you can see the iteration. So as we know that we have total number of 349 records, the iteration will be total 2 iteration. You can see the being reading segment 1, and somewhere we will have the being reading segment 2. And here you can see we are updating the global variable as a sequence. So here you can see, so the tracking message here. So the first time you can see in the first iteration, once we inserted the data into the table, then after we increase the value of the sequence variable, and then again it iterated second times, inserted data, updated the value. And what data inserted, if you will see the data, the first time we data inserted message, and here you can see we inserted a record with the sequence 1 as a instance id. So here if you will see the instance id somewhere, yeah, you can see instance id -1. How many records we have in the sequence, if you will see in the read in segment, here you can see this is the send to read file in segment. Once we will expand here, you can see we will have total 200 records here. Here we have the data, whatever file mapping we provided here, all the values for the file batch 200 size, and here you can see here we have the record. So this is the 200 record. If I will copy this one, here you will see, if I copy this one and make it note here, the record, if I will copy this one here, for F count, here you can see we have 399. 399, it means 400. 400, it means we have the this node twice for each and every record. Here you can see twice for each and every record. It means this is the total 200 records in a single head, in a single segment, and the same record inserted into the database table. So if we will query the table, you can see we have the records. And if you will see the records here, we have the instance id. If you will see, we have the instance id _2 and the _1. You can see, so all the record inserted into 2 segments only. And if we want to, we can find the distinct instance id, we can find the 2 distinct id only. Here you can see, if we will find the count of that one for each and every instance, from here, here you can see in one group we have 200 record, and next group we have 149 records. And what instance id we have, if you will see here, here you can see the instance id _1 having 200 records, second having the 149 records. So this is the simple way we created integration to implement the logic of inserting data into database table, and using the read file in segment for processing the bulk record, bulk data, whatever we have up to 1 GB of size. So all these things we cover here. In the next session, we will learn that how we can we can get the data from database table and all. So right now we inserted data into the table. In next session, we will cover that whatever data we have in the table, we can read the data from database table into OIC. We can generate the file. So that kind of things we can learn. Even we will learn that how we can call the PL/SQL package from the Oracle integration only. So thank you so much for the joining session. If you have any other queries, yes, you can ask. We will conclude the session for today.
Oh, share this video.